I'm Gary Anthony Ramsey with your Hour News Now Rewind. Stories making headlines for the week ending April 23rd, 2011. Our top stories include: a new poll shows Barack Obama holding a slight advantage over would-be Republican rivals, but the advantage isn't all positive. A scare for the First Lady as her plane gets too close to a cargo jet and is forced to abort a landing. In New Orleans, it's the one-year anniversary of the BP oil spill. What has gotten better? What has stayed the same? In California, a GOP official gets defiant, then apologizes for sending an email that depicted Barack Obama as the son of chimps. A new health study says that oral sex is more dangerous to men than smoking. And as his new movie hits theaters, Tyler Perry tells Spike Lee just where he can go with no layover. Our top story. As Barack Obama cranks up his re-election campaign, comes the results of a poll that shows that he has a slight advantage over all of his would-be Republican rivals. But the results of the poll are not all good news for the likely Democratic nominee. The ABC News Washington Post poll shows that in a race with either Sarah Palin, Mike Huckabee, Mitt Romney, Tim Pawlenty, or even Donald Trump, Obama would win by an average of 6%. Bad news for the Republicans for the poll. Only 43% of those surveyed said they were satisfied with the current GOP field. But Democrats apparently have the same problem. Obama's approval ratings dropped after he announced his re-election campaign. The president tried to shore up those numbers among young voters this week by holding a Facebook town hall meeting available to the website's 19 million U.S. users. He took questions on and talked about investments in technology, health care reform, the housing crisis, and the budget deficit, mentioning specifically the Republican plan to cut $4 trillion.
Yes, I think it's fair to say that their vision is radical. No, I don't think it's particularly courageous, because the last point I'll make is this. Nothing is easier than solving a problem on the backs of people who are poor, or people who are powerless, or don't have lobbyists, or don't have clout.
Facebook
I don't think that's particularly courageous.
Partisan criticism, saying the media giant has hosted George W. Bush and New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg. The First Family had to deal with a scare this week as the plane carrying the First Lady and the wife of the Vice President had to be diverted after getting too close to a military cargo jet. The plane carrying Michelle Obama and Dr. Jill Biden was within the 3-mile limit for planes landing at U.S. airports. The cargo jet could not get off the runway fast enough to allow the First Lady's plane to land at the Andrews Air Base near Washington. Her plane was ordered to do a go-around and land again. The FAA stresses that while the limits were exceeded, the flight was never in danger. In California, a Republican official says she will not resign after sending out an email that depicted the President of the United States as the son of chimpanzees. The email containing this photo was sent out by State Assemblywoman Marilyn Davenport. It was accompanied by the words, quote, "Now you know why, no birth certificate." At first, the 72-year-old grandmother and Tea Party member said the furor was ridiculous and part of a double standard. But after a few days of national calls for her resignation, even from members of her own party, she reversed course, saying in part, quote, "I humbly apologize and ask for your forgiveness of my unwise behavior. I didn't stop to think about the historic implications and other examples of how this could be offensive." Well, the Tea Party's offensive over the president's birth certificate had a setback as the governor of Arizona vetoes a measure that would require candidates to present more detailed documents to prove their birth. Jan Brewer killed the so-called birther bill, along with a measure that would have allowed guns on college campuses. Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal said he would sign birther legislation if it came to his desk. Jindal, who is the son of Indian immigrants, says he believes Barack Obama is a United States citizen. Jindal was making the rounds of his state this week as it marked the anniversary of the BP oil spill, the largest man-made disaster in history. 1 year ago, the Deepwater Horizon drilling platform blew up in the Gulf of Mexico, killing 11 men. But the explosion created a rupture that sent out more than 250 million barrels of oil into the water. It took engineers 85 days to seal the hole. The environmental disaster has crippled the seafood and restaurant industry in the Gulf Coast. Currently, BP Oil faces more than $40 billion in liability from the disaster. In New York, funerals for a distraught mother and 3 of her 4 children whom she drowned in the Hudson River. Separate services are held for LaShanda Armstrong, her 11-month-old daughter, and 2 sons, ages 2 and 5. Her 10-year-old son attended his mother's funeral. He survived the murder-suicide by climbing out of the window of the minivan his mother drove off of a dock in Newburgh, New York. The children's father, with whom the mother was allegedly arguing with before the tragedy, did not attend his wife's funeral. In Springfield, Massachusetts, a man is convicted of setting fire to an historic black church right after the election of Barack Obama. 26-year-old Michael Jakes now faces more than 60 years in prison for setting the blaze at the Macedonia Church on November 5th of 2008. No one was hurt in the fire that destroyed the church. In Houston, a 6-year-old hurts himself and 2 of his classmates after a gun he brings to kindergarten drops out of his pants and fires. The incident at the Ross Elementary School sent teachers and children scrambling for the doors. The 6-year-old was shot in the foot. 2 classmates suffered minor injuries from bullet fragments. Criminal charges in the case would be filed against any adult who played a role in either obtaining the weapon, if it's illegal, or allowing the child to have access to it, if it's registered. In Iowa, the University of Iowa officials are investigating a series of alleged acts of racism on the college campus that may have taken place over the last few months. The most recent incident was reported by 20-year-old sophomore Samantha Royston. The St. Louis native told the Des Moines Register that while she and a friend were walking home, a group of men were yelling epithets that included, "You better keep walking, N-word." University officials say if true, the acts are unacceptable and would be grounds for discipline if the offenders are caught. Royston's mother told the paper she believes the university doesn't take bias or racism claims seriously because blacks only make up 2.5% of the admission roll. In your Our News Now World Wrap, violence erupts in Nigeria after President Goodluck Jonathan is re-elected. His main opponent in that race, who says he will appeal the results, says the process was rigged. Muhammadu Buhari says he doesn't condone the rioting being carried on by his supporters in the north section of the country. Like the Sudan, the parties are split primarily along religious lines. Jonathan is part of the Christian population that primarily lives in southern Nigeria, while Buhari supporters, who predominantly are Muslim, live in the north. Goodluck has called for calm, but has ordered troops to the north in an attempt to stop the protests. 100 people have died in the violence. More than 40,000 have fled their homes. In Egypt, a talk show host makes history by becoming the first woman to run for president. Bethena Kamel says she's part of a movement of women in Egypt who refuse to be shut out of the process of creating the new government. Under Hosni Mubarak, who stepped down from power last month, candidates for any office were usually handpicked by his party's officials. That party, the National Democratic Party, or NDP, was ordered dissolved this week by a judge as Hosni Mubarak and 2 of his sons remain detained in Egyptian jails. That's your World Wrap. In health news, a bombshell report is likely to shake sexual concepts and behavior. The results of the study show that men who engage in frequent oral sex with multiple partners are more at risk for oral cancer than men who smoke. The report from the New England Journal of Medicine and the Journal of Oncology says the culprit for this trend is the human papillomavirus, or HPV. This is the same virus that's been linked to cervical and anal cancer in women. HPV is the most common STD in the U.S. About 20 million Americans are currently infected with HPV. Another 6 million will become newly infected each year, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The doctors who say men who have multiple partners are the most at risk. They recommend using latex sheets during this form of sex and to have your dentist screen for oral cancer. More than 36,000 people are diagnosed with oral cancer a year. More than 8,000 will die because it is usually detected late. And finally, it's not exactly Cornel West versus Eric Dyson, but the dust-up this week between directors Spike Lee and Tyler Perry will likely get more attention. The feud also reveals an ongoing rift in the black community over culture and perception. As Perry's new movie hits theaters, he lost his cool at a press conference in which he was asked another question about Spike Lee's ongoing criticism about his movies and films. Lee, the director of movies like Do the Right Thing and Malcolm X, describes Perry's movies as, quote, coonery buffoonery. In the press conference, Perry said Lee can, quote, go straight to hell.
It's only black people that do this to each other. I have never seen Jewish people complaining about Seinfeld. I've never seen Italian people complaining about The Sopranos. It's only us as Negroes that do this to each other.
Perry's Medea's Big Happy Family is now in theaters. For a complete check of any of the stories you've seen on The Rewind, remember, as always, go to the bottom of the webpage, find the link of the story you'd like to see, and click your way through. That's your Our News Now Rewind for this week. I'm Gary Anderson.